Sometimes you get the urge to replay an old game from years ago, but it's always risky to do so, because depending on how far back you go, the games may not hold up. The graphics may be far worse than you remember, and the gameplay mechanics might not be as polished as you've become used to for modern games. For the most part, that wasn't the case for the Battlefield Bad Company games, which I recently replayed. I was very fond of these games back when they came out, and used to replay Bad Company 2 quite often. Now that I've scratched the itch to play them again, how do they hold up by current gaming standards? Let's start off with Bad Company 1. There's quite a stark contrast between Bad Company 1 and 2. In Bad Company 1, because of the way the battle zones are laid out, and the fact that the environments are destructible, there's more strategy required than the typical FPS calls for. You can't just pick a cover spot and hide there for most of the fight, like in other games. You have to use your cover carefully, and try to avoid revealing where you're hiding, because enemies can just blow the wall apart with grenades. Conversely, you can use these destructible environments to your advantage against enemies. If you know where an enemy's hiding, but can't get a clean shot at them, you can simply blow apart their cover with projectile explosives. If you don't know where an enemy is, you can take even more extreme measures, and blow apart every wall in the vicinity to reveal them. When you need to reach somewhere on the map, in most games you'd have to find a route around all obstacles like buildings and such to get there. But in this game, if there's something in your way, you can just blow it up and make a new open path through to where you need to go. It's very convenient. Moving on to other aspects of the gameplay, the parts of the game where you get to fly the helicopter are very fun. The flying mechanics, the ability to land, get out, explore the environment, and repair battle damage to the helicopter before jumping back into the fight by air, forms a combination of features which all work very nicely together. The controls for the general gameplay on the ground, while mostly okay, are a little bit less polished than in modern games. One of the most noticeable problems here is the sprint button. You have to hold down L3 the whole time to sprint, rather than just toggling it on. That was annoying and uncomfortable for the thumb, so much so that sprinting just wasn't a feature I tended to use, which made things slower. This was especially annoying in high-intensity battles where quick escape to cover was necessary. Cycling through weapons and kit is also a little bit more clunky than in modern games. The default controls for doing so are not as streamlined as they could have been, but once you're used to that, it's fine. So, what about Bad Company 2? Well, the controls are more refined in this game than the first. The annoying sprint button issue from the first game is fixed in this sequel. The gameplay works very nicely. It seems like gameplay mechanics for first-person shooters haven't really evolved all that much. In some ways they've even got worse, with developers seeming to try to innovate by adding features which aren't that good, or go unused, or make the gameplay less visceral. I'm thinking specifically of some Call of Duty games. Perhaps the FPS formula was kind of perfected long ago, and doesn't really have anywhere to go anymore. The first Bad Company game has a very basic narrative, and likeable but fairly one-dimensional characters. Overall it has a simplistic charm, while the sequel is much more cinematic, darker, and has a more ambitious story. The sequel also has slightly more varied gameplay. I replayed Bad Company 2 quite a lot back in the day, but not Bad Company 1. 2 was my favourite, so I was surprised to find this time that in spite of 2 being more polished, with slicker, more intuitive gameplay mechanics, the first game was probably more fun to play. This is because the way the battlefields work encourage and facilitate more careful strategy when attacking enemies. In contrast, the second game is more restrictive, more linear in the map layouts, funneling you through more of a tunnel-like gaming experience. It's a bit closer to a generic COD knockoff in this regard. It strips some of the challenge and freedom out of the gameplay, although it is still a lot of fun and creates new challenges with more varied styles of missions and tasks. However, in spite of all that, the more I played through it, the more I realised why I liked Bad Company 2 so much originally. It really does have some fun missions in a nice variety of environments, with a broad range of tasks. While the first game may have more free roam allowances, it feels very localised and small scale, confined to one part of the world, while Bad Company 2 is a globe-trotting adventure with a more developed story and a clearer sense of narrative purpose. In conclusion, I'm surprised to come away from the replay of these games with the opinion that the first game may be better than the second, at least in terms of the gameplay, which is obviously very important for a game. Although Bad Company 2 is good, in order to progress the USP of the brand, I think it would have been better if the developers pushed the open, free roam elements of the first game into new territory for the second, providing you with a bigger sandbox environment to travel around in, and the scope to strategize battle plans to take down enemy forces in a more varied range of ways. The games miss a trick by not including a split screen option, because this type of game really lends itself to that. Playing mini-games on split screen in those fully destructible environments, or playing the campaign on split screen would be so much fun. Regardless of those missed opportunities, the Bad Company games are still very enjoyable, and it's a shame the series ended after such a short run. The second game does set up the possibility for a sequel. I think the series is due a continuation at this point. But what do you think? Are you nostalgic for the Bad Company games? Do you still play them? Would you like more of them to be made? Let me know in the comments below. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching. See you next time.